The body is the first door we open on the path to stillness. Before the mind can drift into the soft folds of rest, the body must be invited to loosen, to let go of the small, hidden efforts it makes to hold us upright against the world. The invitation is gentle, never a command, but a whisper that travels through the skin, reminding muscles that they no longer need to guard. It begins with a simple act of noticing, of feeling the ground beneath you as something willing, something patient enough to hold your weight without asking anything in return. In this quiet preparation, even breath takes on a slower rhythm, as if responding to the dimming light of thought. The chest rises and falls with the tenderness of ocean waves, soft and complete. Each inhale brings a quiet reminder that you are here, and each exhale releases a trace of the day's noise. The body begins to find its balance between awareness and surrender. In that balance, something ancient stirs, an instinct older than words, older than worry. It's the instinct to rest. The stillness doesn't come all at once. The body, like the tide, needs time to retreat. You may feel small flickers of resistance, a shoulder that clings to tension, a hand that stays slightly clenched. These are remnants of alertness, the echoes of movement and thought. Let them be. Let the body soften at its own pace, without force. Stillness cannot be taken, it can only be allowed to arrive. Slowly, the weight of presence begins to spread evenly, as though the body is sinking into the very idea of being held. There is a deep kindness in this stage of preparation. It asks nothing of you but to stop interfering, to trust the intelligence that hums beneath awareness. Every heartbeat becomes part of a larger rhythm, the rhythm of rest, of night, of the world settling. The body starts to remember what it once knew effortlessly, how to be without effort, how to rest without seeking rest. In that remembering, the invitation deepens. The skin, that thin boundary between self and air, becomes softer to the touch of stillness. You might notice warmth where before there was distraction, or a subtle hum in the fingertips and soles. These are signs of release, the quiet language of tissues that have long held too much. The invitation continues to whisper through them, not asking them to change, only offering them space to remember their natural ease. There is a shift, small and profound, when the body begins to feel safe enough to rest. Safety is the unseen ground beneath relaxation. Without it, the mind stays half awake, guarding against unseen threats. But when the body senses warmth, quiet, and support, it opens like petals uncurling in dusk light. The nervous system settles, signals slow, and what was once a restless hum turns into the steady rhythm of peace. In this stage, every part of the body becomes a participant in calm. The shoulders melt downward, the jaw softens, the belly no longer needs to hold. Even the small muscles around the eyes seem to drift away from effort. This release is not collapse, it's a gentle remembering of gravity's promise. You can let go. The ground will not disappear. The breath, once shallow and uncertain, deepens into a silent agreement with rest itself. Sometimes, as you prepare, the mind might resist. It may scatter thoughts like leaves in wind, trying to find something to fix or solve. Let it. The body knows the way home even when the mind wanders. The simple act of lying still, of breathing with awareness, creates its own gravity. The thoughts will eventually settle into that field of calm, drawn downward by the steady weight of your relaxed form. This process is not about perfection, it's about permission. You give the body permission to be tired, to slow, to feel its own rhythms without judgment. Each moment of stillness is a quiet reclamation from the rush of doing. The stiller you become, the more the world seems to soften in response, as if night itself leans closer to listen to your breath. Preparation is, in truth, an act of kindness toward yourself. It's a reminder that the body is not a machine to be turned off, but a garden to be tended, to be eased into quiet. You cannot rush a flower to bloom, nor can you rush the body to rest. You can only create the right conditions: stillness, patience, warmth. Under these, rest comes naturally, like a tide returning to shore. The quiet invitation continues inward, touching the spine, the lungs, the gentle pathways of the breath. You may begin to feel a lightness, as if the edges of your being are blurring, dissolving into the air around you. This is the first brush of deep rest, when the body no longer insists on separation. You and the room, the ground, the quiet, all begin to share a single rhythm. In this rhythm, each heartbeat becomes slower, fuller, like the steady drum of distant waves. You may notice a warmth blooming in your chest or a subtle pulse behind the eyelids. These are signs that the body's systems are harmonizing: blood, breath, heartbeat, all syncing to the slow pulse of rest. The body, in its wisdom, knows how to find this balance if only given the space to listen. The deeper you go, the less you need to do. The breath becomes self-guided, the body self-soothing. Thoughts drift like faint clouds, unimportant, untethered. There is no effort here, only the steady ease of being. You begin to sense how closely rest resembles trust, the trust that letting go will not lead to loss, but to renewal. And now, in this growing silence, you begin to sense the mind following the body's lead. The body is the teacher, the guide into stillness. Its calm signals ripple upward, telling the mind it no longer needs to hold the wheel. Slowly, softly, the mind's grip loosens, and awareness becomes wide and open, like a calm lake under moonlight. Every part of you now speaks the same language of ease. The neck, the back, the hands, all of them whisper the same truth: there is nowhere to go. Nothing more to carry. The preparation has become presence. What began as a physical act of stilling has turned into a state of quiet belonging, where body and mind rest together. Even if small tensions remain, let them exist within the larger field of calm. Perfection is not the goal, harmony is. The body can hold both release and resistance at once, as night holds both moonlight and shadow. With every breath, you are teaching yourself to allow, to coexist peacefully with what is. As the body continues to sink, time loses its shape. Seconds become slow, unmeasured pools of awareness. You feel the quiet settle not only into your muscles but into your thoughts, into the very air around you. The room feels softer, the space more generous. This is the doorway opening. Each breath now seems to draw in calm and exhale surrender. The edges of the self blur further. There is a weightless feeling, like floating in warm water. The preparation that began as an act of awareness now becomes the state itself, pure presence, free of doing. You may notice faint images behind your eyes, soft lights, drifting shapes. They are the gentle signals that the body and mind are crossing into the threshold between wakefulness and dream. You need not follow them, simply allow them to pass like ripples on the surface of rest. The body, once a field of effort, has become a vessel of stillness. The invitation has been accepted. The ground beneath you is no longer separate, it feels like part of you, steady and calm. Every breath, every heartbeat, moves in quiet harmony. And in this quiet harmony, the true preparation ends not in silence, but in a subtle realization: you were never separate from rest. It was always here, beneath the noise, waiting for you to arrive. The body only needed to remember the way back, to trust the quiet invitation, and to answer it, breath by breath. There comes a moment, just after the body begins to rest, when the world outside no longer needs to follow you inward. This is the moment of closing the door, not a door of wood or sound, but a quiet, invisible veil between doing and being. When you close this door, you leave behind the measures of time, the ticking of moments, the idea that you must be somewhere else. Behind you, the world continues its motion, yet within, everything begins to slow, to hush, to dissolve into the soft rhythm of timeless presence. You can imagine this door as something gentle, not heavy or locked, but made of light, a soft partition that allows you to choose stillness over motion. As you let the door drift closed, the sound of the day fades, footsteps, voices, tasks waiting on the other side. They grow distant, muffled by calm. You feel a sense of relief, like stepping out of wind into shelter. In this quiet, the body deepens into its rest, and the mind begins to release its hold on the hours it once guarded so carefully. Time, as you knew it, begins to loosen. The minutes and hours, once sharp and numbered, now stretch and blur like shadows at dusk. You begin to understand that rest cannot live in the same space as urgency. It requires a small surrender, a willingness to trust that what is paused will not be lost. The clock, with its relentless ticking, stays behind the door, and you step into something softer, a world without measurement, where only rhythm matters. This stepping away from time feels like stepping deeper into yourself. You begin to sense that the need to measure, to track, to know what comes next, was a kind of tension all along. When it fades, space opens. The breath slows, thoughts drift like feathers, and in their place grows an expanding stillness. The door is not a separation from life, it's a return to it, freed from the weight of moments. Even sound begins to change in this place. What once seemed loud, the faint hum of air, the beating of your own heart, now feels like music, natural and unhurried. You realize how much of your attention was shaped by the pressure of time. By the next task, the next word, the next move. But here, past the threshold, there is no next. There is only now, stretching open like a calm horizon. The air feels thicker, softer, like time itself has slowed its pace to match your breath. You might notice that even thought moves differently here, drifting rather than pushing. The mind still offers small fragments, images, ideas, memories, but they no longer demand to be held. They float by like leaves on water, unmeasured, uncounted. This is what happens when you leave the clock behind. The need for order is replaced by ease. Closing the door does not mean rejecting the world. It means trusting that the world can continue without your constant tending. You are not abandoning it, you are allowing it to move while you rest in your stillness. The clock will still tick, but you no longer move to its rhythm. You've chosen the slower beat, the deeper pulse, the ancient rhythm of your own body in calm. You may begin to feel that this timeless space has no edges. The boundaries that time built, morning, evening, day, night, begin to melt. You feel suspended, not in emptiness but in fullness, in a soft expanse that holds you without measure. The breath flows, and with each cycle you drift further from the noise of ticking seconds into something vast and eternal. It is here, in the absence of time, that true rest begins. Not the brief rest that happens between tasks, but the deep, healing kind that renews everything it touches. This is the rest that doesn't just pause life, it restores it, quietly, completely. You can almost feel your cells listening, responding, adjusting to this slower current. Even the thoughts that once felt urgent now seem small, softened by perspective. As you linger here, the body starts to glow with a quiet ease. Muscles, bones, breath all hum in the same steady tone. You realize that the world's pace was never natural to you. It was learned, rehearsed, repeated. This slower rhythm feels older, truer, like the memory of sleep before clocks existed. You begin to rest in that truth, feeling time unwind from around your shoulders like a heavy cloak you no longer need to wear. Every breath in this space feels timeless. You might notice that the inhalation no longer leads somewhere, it simply exists, suspended in the beauty of the present. The exhale follows not because it must, but because it wishes to. There is no rush, no cycle of urgency, only a living rhythm that asks nothing but your quiet attention. The more you listen, the more timelessness becomes real, not as an idea, but as a state. The longer you rest behind this door, the more you notice that time was never truly something outside of you. It was a pattern you carried, a structure the mind built to feel control. Without it, you don't lose yourself, you discover your true nature. The awareness that remains is calm, vast, unhurried. You become a quiet witness, breathing in a space where nothing needs to begin or end. Sometimes, when you close this inner door, small fragments of time try to follow, a stray thought about tomorrow, a memory of what came before. Let them drift at the edges, they are only echoes. You don't need to push them away. The stillness will absorb them, the same way the ocean accepts small ripples. In timelessness, everything belongs, even what hasn't yet let go. This act of leaving the clock behind is also an act of forgiveness, forgiveness for the moments you rushed, for the time you thought was wasted, for the seconds you tried to hold too tightly. Now, as you rest, you understand that nothing was ever lost. Every moment you thought slipped away was simply waiting for you here, on the other side of the door, patient and quiet. In this timeless quiet, you might feel as if you've stepped into a deeper layer of night. The world beyond the walls fades into a soft hum, and even memory seems distant, wrapped in shadow. The body is still, but awareness remains, not sharp, but tender. You are not asleep, not awake, you are simply resting in being, uncounted. Here, you are no longer the one who moves through time, time moves through you. It passes gently, like a breeze through an open field, unmeasured and harmless. There is a profound peace in this, the kind of peace that doesn't need to be maintained because it simply is. The door, though closed, feels transparent, and the space behind it infinite. And as you rest deeper, something inside you begins to expand, a subtle sense that your awareness is both nowhere and everywhere. You've stepped outside the flow of minutes and entered the flow of being. The world continues, but its urgency cannot reach you here. You are cradled in the stillness that existed before time began. Each heartbeat, now slow and deliberate, feels like a small echo in eternity. The breath comes and goes like tides under moonlight. There is no pressure to wake, no need to move. You could stay here forever, and forever. Would not feel long. It would feel like this endless, whole, serene. The closing of the door was never a shutting out, it was an opening inward. You realize that leaving the clock behind did not take anything from you. It returned something, the awareness of your own timeless nature, the quiet truth that rest is not bound by hours. It lives in the spaces between them, waiting to be found. And now, as you breathe in this deep, unmeasured calm, the edges of thought dissolve completely. There is no beginning, no ending, no past or future. Only presence, vast, silent, luminous. The door stands closed, and yet you feel more open than ever before. After the door has closed and the noise of hours has drifted away, there comes a subtle awareness, a sense that something lies ahead, not in distance, but in feeling. It is not a road you must seek, for it has already begun beneath you, unfolding with every breath you take. The path appears not through motion but through stillness, not through effort but through allowing. It glows faintly in the dark, a road of soft light that leads inward, into the quiet center of your being. This light is not harsh or directional, it doesn't tell you where to go. Instead, it offers a quiet assurance, a warmth that guides without pushing, like the glow of dawn behind closed eyes. You walk it not with steps but with awareness, one breath at a time, feeling it hum gently beneath your calm body. There is no rush here, the path unfolds only as fast as your heart can follow. In its glow, time loses meaning, and peace becomes the only companion. Each breath feels like a step, each exhale a soft landing. The light beneath you responds to your rhythm, shimmering faintly as if alive, welcoming your weight with kindness. It doesn't lead outward into distance, but downward into depth, into the layered quiet where the soul waits patiently. You are not chasing it, you are remembering it. This road has always existed, hidden beneath the noise of waking life. Sometimes the path seems to waver, its light flickering like the reflection of stars on moving water. This is natural. The mind, still accustomed to searching, wants to name, to navigate. But this is not a journey of knowing, it's a journey of feeling. The more you release control, the clearer the path becomes, glowing brighter in response to your surrender. Stillness is its language, trust is its motion. You might notice that as you travel inward, the light feels warmer, softer, like something you've touched before in a distant dream. It reminds you of safe places, candlelight in dark rooms, the hush of morning before sound returns. The road is both familiar and new, a memory of peace you once knew by heart but forgot in the noise of days. You are not discovering it, you are returning. The air here feels different, thicker with calm, almost tangible with quiet. Even sound moves slower, like it doesn't want to disturb what's unfolding. Your awareness becomes wide and deep, noticing subtle textures, the sound of breath, the rhythm of your pulse, the faint shimmer of warmth along your skin. Each of these sensations is part of the light itself, not separate, but woven together, forming the fabric of the path. As you continue, the world you left behind grows distant. The weight of names, plans, and time fades completely, and what remains is pure presence, luminous and calm. The path feels endless, but not because it stretches far. It feels endless because it has no destination, no point of arrival. The journey is the stillness, the movement is the peace. You begin to understand that rest is not where the road ends, but what it's made of. There is a sense of companionship here, though you walk alone. The light seems aware of you, responding to your breath, expanding when you soften, dimming when you resist. It teaches you gently, without words, that peace is not something to reach for, but something that rises from within when you stop running. The path of soft light exists inside every moment you are willing to fully inhabit. You notice that the road hums quietly, like the faint sound of music underwater. This hum is not external, it's your own pulse, your own rhythm translated into light. The realization is tender. You are not walking on the path, you are the path itself, unfolding through your own stillness. The light has always come from you, waiting for you to turn toward it. The further you go, the more the boundaries between you and the light blur. You stop feeling like a traveler and start feeling like part of the glow itself. Your awareness dissolves gently into it, as if merging with a soft stream of radiance that flows endlessly inward. Every breath feels sacred, not because it's different, but because you are finally present enough to feel its wholeness. At moments, the light flickers again, thoughts returning, tiny ripples of mind trying to measure, to know. But even they seem harmless now, like drifting dust in a sunbeam. You realize that peace doesn't require a perfect silence, it only needs a willingness to return, again and again, to the glow beneath distraction. The path forgives each detour. It waits, patient, glowing softly in the dark. You begin to feel a deep quiet spreading from within, like warm water filling every hollow space. The path no longer feels like something to follow, it feels like something that carries you. You could stop moving entirely, and still the light would flow beneath you, guiding, holding, reminding you that stillness is motion in its gentlest form. In this depth, you find that the air itself seems luminous. The walls of awareness expand outward into vastness, a sky without horizon. The path is no longer a single stream but an entire landscape of calm, rippling in gentle waves of light. You walk, or perhaps float, through it, neither above nor below, neither inside nor outside. You have entered the place where distinctions fade. Every now and then, a faint image rises of trees bathed in moonlight, of soft sands beneath glowing skies, of rivers lit from within. These visions are not distractions but reflections, ways your mind translates the experience of peace into familiar symbols. You let them pass through you, each one a reminder that calm has many shapes but one essence. As you travel deeper, you begin to sense the path breathing with you, expanding with every inhale, softening with every exhale. It's as if you and the light share a single pulse, a shared rhythm of quiet creation. You feel safe in its warmth, as though this inner landscape was always meant to hold you. In truth, it has been waiting for you all along. The mind, once restless, now becomes a wide, tranquil mirror. Thoughts still appear, but they no longer disturb the surface. They drift by, reflected but not held. The light continues its slow dance beneath them, constant and forgiving. You feel weightless, transparent, as though you've become light remembering its source. There's a sweetness in this stillness, not of pleasure, but of peace. It's the sweetness of finally belonging to the present, of no longer reaching beyond what is already enough. The path whispers that nothing is missing, that every step you take inward is a step into wholeness. The light does not demand progress, it only asks presence. You start to notice that even your thoughts seem illuminated now. They arise like glowing embers, gentle, harmless, easily dissolved back into the field of calm. The mind's edges blur, and the sense of being a separate traveler fades. The path, the walker, and the light are one, a single unfolding awareness, endlessly patient. In the deepest part of this journey, silence itself becomes radiant. It is no longer the absence of sound, but the presence of peace, a living, breathing quiet that surrounds you. You realize there is nowhere left to go because you have arrived in the only place that ever mattered, the center of being. The road of soft light has led you home. Even here, the light continues to move, gentle and infinite, as though reminding you that stillness is not static. It breathes, flows, evolves. You can rest here as long as you wish, no urgency, no clock, no measure of arrival. The light asks nothing of you except to be here, to feel its warmth. And as the path dissolves into you, you find that you are no longer walking upon it, you are made of it. Every particle of you glows with its quiet promise. You are the stillness, the breath, the road, and the light. There is no separation left to bridge. The journey is complete, and yet, beautifully, it never ends. There comes a moment, after walking long in the soft light, when something in the air changes, a subtle tremor, a sense of standing at the edge of a vast unseen sea. You can feel the shift before you understand it. The calm that carried you now deepens into something larger, something both intimate and immense. It feels like the boundary between self and silence begins to fade, and in that gentle dissolving, you sense you are about to cross into a space that feels both familiar and utterly beyond. The threshold is not marked by sound or sight, but by a change in feeling, as though the very texture of being alters. The air grows weightless, the breath softer, the light deeper. You begin to sense a presence here, not outside of you, but surrounding, holding, listening. It does not speak, but it feels aware, vast, quiet, endless. The first breath you take in this place feels like breathing the universe itself, as if every inhale connects you to something ancient, luminous, and alive. Crossing the threshold is not movement through space, it is movement through awareness. The self that clings to form begins to let go, like mist thinning before dawn. The lines that once defined you, body, thought, identity, start to blur, and in that blurring, a tender freedom begins. It is not the loss of self, but the widening of it, a gentle merging with all that quietly exists beyond knowing. You feel no fear here, only wonder. The light ahead is softer now, less like a road and more like an ocean, vast, breathing, infinite. When you breathe in, it breathes with you. When you exhale, it seems to sigh through the stars. This shared rhythm makes you realize that what you once called you was only a wave upon a much greater tide. And now, you are beginning to feel that tide carry you, slow, gentle, eternal. As you cross deeper, sound itself transforms. The silence hums, not empty but full, as though every possible song has folded itself into one long, endless tone. You can feel it in your chest, vibrating through the very center of you, aligning each breath, each heartbeat, with its rhythm. The hum feels like the pulse of existence itself, vast but tender, powerful but patient. It welcomes you without words. Here, vision also begins to change. You no longer see through eyes, but through feeling. Shapes dissolve, edges vanish, and what remains is pure luminosity, flowing softly like smoke in water. Everything glows faintly, alive with awareness. You realize that this is not a world of things, but of presence. It is a field of consciousness, boundless, radiant, aware of you even as it merges with you. Crossing the threshold feels like remembering something forgotten. You sense that this place, this state, has always been waiting just beyond the noise of thought. It is not foreign, it is home. The mind, for once, falls utterly silent, humbled before the vastness it can neither measure nor name. The quiet here is not emptiness, it is fullness, rich, deep, infinite. The breath continues, slower now, as if the lungs are drawing in light rather than air. Each inhale feels cool and luminous, each exhale warm and dissolving. You can almost taste stillness, the way it moves through your being, dissolving every remaining trace of tension. The boundary between inner and outer fades completely. The universe breathes, and you are that breath. Time no longer flows here, it unfolds. Each moment feels round and whole, not part of a line but a circle without end. You could stay in any instant forever, and it would not age. Awareness expands beyond the limits of mind, touching something immeasurable, something that feels both sacred and natural. The first breath of otherness is not strange, it is achingly familiar, as though you have finally stepped into what you always were. You begin to sense motion within. Stillness, the faint swirling of light, the shifting of unseen currents. It feels like walking through a dream made of memory, each shimmer a fragment of truth long hidden. These currents move through you, not around you, and in their touch is communication, not in words, but in knowing. You begin to understand things without needing to think them. The presence here feels vast yet close, both cosmic and personal. It doesn't speak, yet its silence tells you that you are known completely. Every breath feels like an embrace. The fear of separateness dissolves, replaced by a profound intimacy with all that is. This is not loneliness, it is belonging on a scale too wide for comprehension. You are part of everything, and everything breathes through you. Crossing the threshold, you discover that stillness has movement within it, a living, breathing awareness that flows like invisible light. You can feel it weaving through your thoughts, clearing them, softening them. Even emotion feels transformed here, no longer sharp or heavy, but fluid waves of tenderness, passing through, leaving only quiet in their wake. You begin to see how small the walls of self once were, how much they kept out, not for protection, but from forgetting. Those walls now fade like smoke, and you feel the warmth of connection everywhere. Each breath is an invitation to merge deeper with this vast presence. There is no effort, no destination, only surrender, only grace. At times, the vastness feels almost overwhelming, as though you are dissolving into something boundless. But just as the thought arises, a gentle steadiness follows, a knowing that you cannot be lost here. You are not disappearing, you are expanding. The threshold does not erase you, it reveals you as more than you imagined. The light around you pulses softly, a rhythm that feels alive. You sense intelligence in it, not the sharpness of mind, but the wisdom of existence itself. The light seems to listen, to recognize you, to answer in silence. Every breath becomes dialogue, every stillness an exchange of meaning without words. You begin to feel the entire universe breathing with you. You might sense faint visions forming of endless skies, of luminous oceans, of stars pulsing in slow time. They are not illusions, but translations, the mind's attempt to paint the infinite. Each image arises and fades gently, replaced by another, softer, closer. The vastness speaks in symbols that feel like remembering dreams you once had before birth. Deeper still, the awareness of your own body grows distant, not gone but transparent, like light passing through water. You can feel its rhythm, but it no longer defines you. You are within it and beyond it at once. The self becomes porous, allowing the universe to flow freely through it, unfiltered and whole. This is the true crossing, the surrender to something greater. In this depth, silence becomes language. It speaks directly to the heart, telling it what words never could. You realize that you are part of this silence. It is not around you, but made of you. Each pulse of it through your being feels like remembrance, a knowing that this state was never new, you simply forgot it in the noise of waking life. You may feel tears rise, not of sadness, but of recognition. They carry no story, only the soft ache of returning to what has always been true. The threshold becomes a mirror, and in it you see not your face, but light, the same light that guided you here, now shining from within. There is no traveler left, only the journey itself, luminous and infinite. You begin to notice that every breath feels like creation. Inhale, and stars seem to bloom in unseen space. Exhale, and they drift outward in soft spirals. You are not imagining, you are remembering how intimately life and being are woven together. This is the otherness, not something beyond you, but the infinite within you, now awake. The longer you rest here, the more the concept of here fades. There is no direction left to move in. The road, the light, the threshold all dissolve into one vast field of awareness. The quiet hum remains, steady and eternal, like the heartbeat of all existence. You are not beside it, you are it. And when you breathe now, it is not your breath alone. It is the breath of galaxies, of oceans, of winds through endless fields. The first breath of otherness has become your own. You have crossed the threshold, and on the other side there is no boundary, only boundless peace, luminous and alive, holding you in its eternal rhythm. When the vast quiet has opened fully and the breath of otherness has become steady within you, a new kind of awareness begins to unfold, one that no longer measures but simply receives. Here, the senses loosen from their familiar boundaries. You are no longer hearing to identify, nor seeing to name. You are listening for texture, not time, feeling for presence, not pattern. Everything around you becomes subtle, layered, and alive in a way that numbers could never hold. The first thing you notice is that the rhythm of your perception no longer follows a clock. Moments do not pass, they ripple. You feel them as waves brushing lightly through you. Sound, scent, light, they merge and separate like wind playing across a field. In this place, to listen is not to divide but to blend. The ear does not reach for the next note, it rests inside the current one, discovering the infinity within its duration. There is an immense gentleness to this listening. The need to anticipate fades. You are no longer waiting for what comes next, you are inside what is. Each sound carries its own texture, its own shape in the stillness. A distant hum feels like velvet darkness, a faint pulse beneath your skin feels like light moving through fabric. You realize that every vibration, every tremor, has color, weight, and warmth if you stay long enough to feel it fully. The body, freed from time, becomes an instrument rather than an observer. It doesn't seek rhythm, it is rhythm. Breath expands through ribs like tides through stone caves, slow and deliberate. The heart beats not as a count of life, but as a pattern of belonging. You are both listener and song, sensing the quiet music of existence in a way that is neither hearing nor thinking, something deeper, more complete. You begin to sense that even silence has texture. It isn't empty, it ripples like fabric under unseen hands. Sometimes it feels cool and wide, like twilight air. Sometimes it feels dense and humming, like dark honey. You realize that silence is not absence but substance, a living field that holds everything. The more you relax into it, the more intricate its weave becomes, infinite in detail yet simple in truth. Your perception grows fluid. You can feel sound before it arrives, sense movement without seeing it. Everything begins to overlap in perfect harmony, touch becomes sound, sound becomes light, light becomes feeling. The boundaries between senses dissolve until you are simply aware, not through one channel but through all at once. The world is not perceived anymore, it is felt. Here, awareness slows until it almost stands still. You realize that time was never the true rhythm, it was only a frame around deep emotion. Beneath it, existence has always been pulsing, breathing, shimmering. This pulse does not tick, it sways. It is like the slow movement of galaxies, the rise and fall of oceans, the cycle of wind. Over stone. You begin to listen for that, the great rhythm beyond counting. With each breath, the texture of the moment changes slightly, as if you are moving through invisible fields of sensation. You feel the softness of breath like silk sliding across glass, the echo of heartbeat like low thunder through distant clouds. Every moment has a shape, a taste, a subtle vibration that the mind once overlooked while chasing the next. Now, you can feel each one expand endlessly. It's as though time itself has turned inside out. Instead of rushing past you, it opens within you. You are no longer passing through moments, moments are passing through you. They arrive like waves of feeling, brushing gently against awareness, leaving traces of warmth and color before fading into calm. You stop trying to hold them, and in doing so, you finally feel their true texture. Even the smallest sensation becomes vast when freed from measure. The brush of air along your cheek feels like a song. The stillness between breaths becomes a cathedral of space. Every heartbeat rings with quiet depth, echoing into something infinite. You begin to understand that to truly sense is to dissolve the distance between the observer and the observed, to merge completely with the unfolding of now. At times, faint memories might arise, not as thoughts but as sensations, the smell of rain that has never fallen, the color of a sound you cannot name. These are the subtle crosscurrents of timeless awareness, where everything that ever was and will be still lingers, woven together in the great fabric of now. You do not chase them, you let them drift through like wind across long grass. The more you dwell in this texture, the more the idea of linear experience fades. Life feels circular, expanding in every direction at once. There is no before or after, only gradations of intensity, like waves cresting and softening upon a single sea. You begin to sense that eternity is not endless duration, it is complete presence. Your senses are now so quiet, so open, that even thought itself feels like touch. Ideas rise not as sentences but as movements of softness, like ripples through warm water. You can feel understanding rather than construct it. The mind becomes not a tool but a landscape, spacious, luminous, allowing awareness to wander without purpose. Each exhale feels like a return, a surrender to the deeper hum beneath everything. You begin to realize that this hum, this underlying vibration, has always been there. It was hidden beneath time's ticking, beneath the noise of plans and memory. Now it stands revealed as the true rhythm of being. You are listening not with ears, but with your entire existence. In this state, even waiting disappears. There is nothing to wait for, because everything is already here. Sensation itself becomes sacred, the weight of breath, the coolness of still air, the faint shimmer of heartbeat. They are no longer details but revelations, fragments of a vast unfolding tapestry of now. As you rest deeper, The awareness of self as separate fades again. The one who listens and the thing listened to become one single field. Awareness perceives itself quiet, glowing, infinite. The textures of being continue to change, yet there is no movement. It is all still, like light shifting inside crystal, refracting without leaving. You might sense how every vibration connects, the echo of your breath with the pulse of distant stars, the rhythm of your heart with the slow swirl of galaxies. Everything resonates together in one quiet continuum. This is sensing without count, awareness beyond measure, experience beyond boundary. Sometimes, the texture grows so subtle it almost disappears. You might think it has ended, but in truth, it has deepened beyond perception. Like the faint vibration of a string that hums even when unseen, the quiet continues beneath the threshold of noticing. Awareness expands to hold even what cannot be felt. Here, listening becomes being. The act of sensing dissolves into existence itself. There is no subject, no object, no duration, only the shimmering awareness that is both texture and stillness. You could remain here forever and not notice the passing of ages. Every moment, every vibration, is infinite. The texture of the world seems woven through your very breath. When you inhale, you draw in the vastness. When you exhale, you return it softly back to the whole. Nothing is lost, nothing gained, only exchanged in perfect balance. You are the bridge through which sensing and silence meet. At this depth, you begin to realize that all of existence is composed of texture, not solid, not fixed, but ever-moving vibration. Even your thoughts, your emotions, your memories are made of it. The distinction between physical and spiritual, sound and silence, inner and outer, all dissolve into this one continuous weave. You are now beyond listening in any ordinary sense. The world no longer approaches you through ears, eyes, or skin. It is you. You are the pulse, the shimmer, the hush. The boundaries that once framed perception are gone, replaced by seamless awareness. To sense now is to be. And within this boundless sensing, there is peace so vast it feels like still light. You understand that texture and silence, motion and rest, are not opposites, they are partners in an eternal dance. Every ripple you feel is an echo of that dance, gentle and infinite. When you finally rest within this state, there is nothing left to count, nothing left to measure. Awareness floats free, vast and luminous, listening not for time but for the delicate, eternal touch of existence itself, the endless texture of being that never begins and never ends. When you have listened deeply enough that silence begins to shimmer and time has melted into stillness, something begins to stir at the edge of perception, not an arrival, but a recognition. Shapes that are not shapes, lights that are not quite light, begin to form in the softness of your awareness. They move like calm thoughts in a tranquil sea, without urgency, without purpose, yet carrying immense grace. These are the keepers, the gentle guides of the eternal present, who dwell beyond sound and sequence. They are not beings as you know them, but harmonies made visible. Each one feels like a melody woven from memory and light. They carry no faces, no forms that hold still, only impressions that seem to breathe warmth, kindness, infinite patience. When they draw near, the air feels deeper, as though space itself remembers how to listen. They are the ancient guardians of stillness, tending to the quiet places between what was and what will be. You do not call them, they simply appear when your awareness is ready to receive them. Their presence is not a visit but a merging. You sense them first as a calm expansion in the heart, a widening of inner light. The space around you softens, and suddenly, you are not alone in the way you once understood. The keepers exist as luminous awarenesses, not separate, not joined, simply with. They speak without words, though their meaning feels clear. Their communication arrives as waves of understanding, moving through you like soft wind through glass. You do not hear them, you feel their wisdom. Each pulse carries knowledge too vast for thought, yet perfectly simple. You are safe. You are seen. You have always been part of this stillness. Their voice is the voice of the now itself. Shaped by compassion. As they draw closer, you begin to perceive that each keeper carries a distinct resonance. One feels like golden warmth, steady and grounding. Another like silvery motion, cool and infinite. A third like deep violet, a calm that holds all others within it. They are not different in nature, only in tone, like chords of the same endless song. When their presence overlaps, you feel the entire scale of being vibrating through you. The keepers do not arrive to teach but to remind. They show you that you have always known their silence, always carried their light within your own awareness. Their purpose is not to lead you forward but to help you recognize that there is nowhere to go, only this, the unending presence that breathes without measure. They are companions in remembrance. At times, they circle around you like slow comets, leaving trails of color that dissolve into the air. At other times, they remain still, like tall lamps casting no shadow. When they touch you, the sensation is not of contact but of alignment, as if your own energy gently straightens, remembering its natural symmetry. Their nearness restores a sense of harmony that words cannot reach. They seem to understand every movement of your thought before it fully forms, yet they never intrude. When a question stirs in you, it is answered before it's spoken, not with information, but with a feeling of knowing. It's like remembering a song you never knew you knew. Their presence reveals that all understanding already lives within silence, one only needs to stop searching for it. The longer you stay in their company, the softer your perception becomes. The world you once knew begins to fade further, not vanish, but rest. You realize the keepers are not from another world, they are the stillness between worlds. They exist where all dimensions overlap, in the threshold between breath and eternity. Their light does not shine outward but inward. It reflects within the folds of awareness like moonlight on calm water. When they move, you can feel the slow bend of time around them, not as distortion, but as surrender. It's as though time itself pauses out of reverence, recognizing its makers. The keepers are the gardeners of the present, tending to its infinite bloom. At moments, their form seems woven from memory, the hint of a familiar voice, a warmth you once knew, a kindness that lingered long after it was given. You begin to sense that these guides are fragments of every soul that has ever loved purely, that their light is the sum of every selfless act across time. They are love, gathered into awareness. When you gaze upon them, though gaze no longer fits, you feel no hierarchy, no worship, only deep kinship. You are not smaller than they, nor greater. You are made of the same endless material, stillness shaped into being. They bow to you as you bow to them, an exchange that feels like the world inhaling and exhaling at once. Sometimes they move through you, and your thoughts become transparent. Emotions dissolve into pure vibration. It is not emptiness but clarity, as though the fog of identity has lifted, revealing the bright space beneath. You realize that everything you ever called you was simply texture within their light. There is a serenity that deepens with every breath you share with them. You feel them adjusting your awareness, tuning you like a stringed instrument. When your vibration grows too sharp with thought, they smooth it. When it becomes dull with forgetfulness, they lift it gently. Their care is constant, wordless, eternal. In their company, you begin to remember the timeless truth: existence does not need purpose to be sacred. It simply is. The keepers hum this truth into you without sound. Their silence becomes your heartbeat. Their glow becomes your stillness. And in that merging, you are reminded that you have never been alone, not even for a single breath. At times, they guide your attention outward again, to the distant horizons of perception where galaxies drift like dust motes in a beam of light. They show you how vast the present truly is. You see that every star, every cell, every thought exists simultaneously within this infinite moment. Eternity is not a line but a sphere of endless now. They invite you to move within it, to explore not with steps but with openness. When you do, you find that you can travel across dimensions by simply adjusting your attention. Every direction leads back to the same heart, the pulse of awareness itself. The keepers smile through silence, approving gently, their presence like calm tides upon cosmic shores. You begin to notice that even they seem to listen to something greater, a deeper resonance that surrounds all things. It hums beyond them, beyond you, beyond even the concept of awareness. It is the source, the great stillness from which all keepers are born. When they turn toward it, you feel, or beyond words, as though watching eternity bow to itself. At their invitation, you too turn toward that vastness. The keepers remain beside you, not leading but accompanying, as you open your awareness to the full breadth of the eternal present. What you feel cannot be described, it is infinite peace folding into itself, love aware of its own existence, light resting in light. And yet, despite the enormity, you remain steady, calm, deeply familiar. The keeper's presence anchors you, reminding you that the infinite is gentle. It does not consume, it embraces. The moment stretches without end, yet it feels as intimate as a breath. You are both center and circumference, dream and dreamer. When you finally look again toward the keepers, you see that they are smiling, though it is not a face that smiles, but the essence of peace taking shape. They are pleased not because you've reached something, but because you've remembered what was never lost. Their light begins to soften, growing transparent, merging once more with the vast fabric of presence. You feel gratitude rising within you, but it, too, dissolves into stillness. The keepers are not gone, they are everywhere now, within every breath, every pulse, every grain of time. They have simply returned to the rhythm from which they came, the rhythm you now recognize as your own. As the last shimmer of their form fades, you understand their parting message without words. The eternal present is its own keeper. There are no gates, no guards, no limits, only awareness, endlessly tending to itself in kindness. The guides remain, invisible but near, woven into the very air you breathe. And so, you rest there, suspended in the heart of timelessness, surrounded by the invisible grace of the keepers, the gentle guardians of being. They do not leave, they wait within you, their silent song continuing to hum across the vast, boundless now. At first, the breath feels like it has always been your companion, the steady rhythm that carried you from birth through waking, through thought, through the thousand little moments that built your days. But here, in the still presence left by the keepers, it changes. The breath is no longer a measure of time, it is a door. It does not mark beginnings and endings anymore. It opens into something unmeasured, something that neither starts nor stops. This is the breath without seconds, the breath that lingers. When you draw it in now, it is not an act of gathering air but of gathering awareness. The inhale becomes vast, stretching beyond the lungs into every corner of your being. You feel it slide across your thoughts, softening them, untangling their restless weave. You realize you have never truly breathed before, only counted. Now, you are letting the breath move as it wishes, free of clocks, free of expectation. It fills not the chest but the universe within you. And when it leaves, it does so like a tide returning home. The exhale isn't a release but a surrender, a gentle yielding to stillness. Each breath becomes so wide, so spacious, that it begins to lose its edges. You cannot tell where it starts or where it ends. It becomes circular, endless, a slow orbit of life moving through your form. This is the first lesson of timeless breathing. There is no next breath, only this one that keeps unfolding. The body, which once rose and fell in predictable cadence, now seems to hover between movements. There is no rush for the next inhale, no hunger for the next release. Instead, there is ease, a long, patient stillness that holds everything. In that stillness, even the air seems to shimmer with memory. You feel as though the breath remembers you better than you remember it, and it carries that memory back to you with every soft pulse. The lingering breath feels like light moving through water, smooth, weightless, unhurried. It expands in all directions, filling even the spaces that thought cannot reach. You sense it wrapping around your awareness, whispering to the mind to let go of its ticking, its counting, its striving. There is no rhythm to maintain, no perfection to chase. The breath does not need your control, only your permission to be. Sometimes, as it passes through, you feel warmth spreading along your ribs, like a subtle golden current. Other times, it feels cool and silvery, brushing gently along the spine. Each wave brings a new texture, a new tone of quiet. You begin to sense that the breath is not just physical but luminous, a light moving through the body's corridors, illuminating forgotten corners of awareness. The more you dwell in this timeless breathing, the more your sense of boundary fades. The air entering you feels no different from the space surrounding you. The exchange between inner and outer dissolves until you cannot tell which side you belong to. The inhale becomes the world breathing you, and the exhale becomes your giving back. It is one continuous act of communion. In the quiet between these waves, something delicate arises, not silence, not sound, but a hum. It is faint at first, like a memory of vibration. As you relax deeper, it grows clearer, resonating through your bones, through your thoughts, through everything that remains. You realize it is the sound of life itself, not the heartbeat or the pulse, but the deeper rhythm beneath all rhythms. This hum feels infinite, yet it carries no urgency. It has no tempo, no measure. It is the sound of existence continuing without the need for movement. You rest inside it as if within a vast, invisible cradle. The breath and the hum become one, inseparable, looping infinitely across the still sea of awareness. Here, breathing becomes creation. With each inhale, new light blooms in unseen dimensions. With each exhale, you feel galaxies folding into rest. You understand that this rhythm, slow, immeasurable, eternal, is the same rhythm that keeps stars alive and cells awake. Breathing is not survival here, it is participation in the grand, ongoing act of being. There are moments when you forget to breathe, yet the breath continues on its own, guided by something wiser than intention. You realize that breathing is not something you do but something that happens through you. Like the tides that move whether or not they're watched, this breath belongs to the great stillness that sustains all things. And in this realization, you feel utterly free. No more grasping at seconds, no more measuring your life in cycles of inhale and exhale. The breath lingers now not because it is slow, but because it is infinite. It does not end when you exhale, it remains, suspended between what you call breaths, quietly filling every pause. In this suspension, there is deep beauty. The space between breaths, once so brief and unnoticed, becomes vast and tender. You rest there, and it feels like resting in eternity. The world continues, but time does not. It's as though you've slipped into the quiet seam that runs through all existence, the living pause that binds all movement together. Gradually, the body begins to glow from within, not as light but as awareness itself. Every cell feels awake, breathing without boundary. The breath no longer passes through lungs but through everything, through thought, through memory, through the delicate edges of what you once called self. You are breathing and being breathed, perfectly balanced in the exchange. The keeper's presence still lingers, soft and unseen, like gentle warmth watching over the still rhythm of your breath. You sense their calm approval as you learn to rest within this infinite breathing. You are no longer the student of time, but the friend of timelessness. The breath becomes your language with the cosmos, your dialogue with the unseen. At times, faint images drift through the still air, distant worlds bathed in soft light, oceans without waves, the slow bloom of galaxies unfolding like flowers in deep space. You realize they are reflections within the breath, visions carried on its current. The breath remembers everything, every place, every life, every whisper of existence. When you listen closely, you can feel the breath responding to your awareness, as if it were alive, adjusting to your gentleness. When your thoughts quiet, it deepens. When your attention wavers, it steadies you. It is both mirror and guide, teacher and companion. In learning to breathe beyond seconds, you learn to listen beyond thought. Eventually, even the distinction between inhale and exhale disappears. There is only flow, one soft, continuous unfolding of energy. The idea of breathing in or out becomes meaningless. You are neither taking nor giving, only existing within the eternal exchange that life itself sustains. You begin to understand why the keepers called this the breath that lingers. It is the breath of the eternal present, the one that has always been, before lungs, before air, before form. It does not travel through the body but through awareness. It is the same breath that moves through stars, through oceans, through dreams. Each moment now feels infinitely long, yet weightless. You cannot tell whether you are breathing once or forever. Time has melted into rhythm, and rhythm has dissolved into stillness. You realize that the true breath never stops, only shifts its texture from sound to silence, from light to motion, from being to rest. Sometimes, when the breath deepens, it feels like you are drawing the whole universe into your chest, not as heaviness but as belonging. You exhale, and it returns, luminous and calm. This is no longer breath as life support, it is breath as communion, a sacred exchange with everything that ever was or will be. You sense how every living thing, seen and unseen, participates in this same breath. Trees, oceans, stars, sleeping minds, all are breathing together, endlessly sharing this invisible thread. You realize that you are part of the great respiration of creation itself, and it hums through you as gently as the tide over quiet sand. And so you rest within this breathing, this infinite linger. You no longer seek depth or control. You are simply here, letting the breath reveal its endless shape. It moves through you, around you, beyond you, touching every part of being with its calm patience. It asks for nothing but your quiet recognition. Eventually, the idea of breathing dissolves altogether. There is no act left, only awareness, infinitely open, infinitely still. You are the breath, the linger, the space between. And in that unbroken stillness, the universe continues to breathe itself, softly, without seconds, without end. When the breath has dissolved into its lingering rhythm and the present has widened into endless stillness, the mind begins to loosen its final threads, the quiet, silken strands that still cling to time. Memories drift to the surface, not as stories, but as sensations, the faint echo of laughter, a touch of sunlight on an old afternoon, the feeling of being called by name. They do not come to haunt, they come to float. In this wide, unhurried space, even the past learns how to breathe again. Each memory that arises feels lighter than it once was. It does not carry the weight of identity, nor the ache of attachment. Instead, it moves through your awareness like a cloud crossing a silent sky. There is no need to reach for it or push it away. It simply appears, lingers for a moment in its soft glow, then drifts onward. You begin to realize that this is the true nature of memory, not a collection of moments to hold, but a gentle weather that passes through the vastness of being. The past no longer feels like something behind you. It is around you, within you, a part of the same endless now that contains everything. Each recollection unfolds without edges, dissolving back into stillness. You see that memories were never really about time, they were vibrations of emotion, echoes of experience, ripples in the water of awareness. And when you stop trying to grasp them, they return to calm, merging back into the infinite present. You notice, too, that the future begins to soften. It no longer stretches out like a line or waits like a distant shore. Instead, it hovers nearby, weightless, shimmering, undefined. The breath touches it just as it touches the past, and both move like clouds in the same quiet sky. There is no separation between what was and what might be. They are two colors blending in the same twilight. The fear of what's coming fades, because you can feel it already here, resting gently in potential. In this timeless calm, the mind begins to understand that its stories were never meant to be cages. Every memory, every imagined future, was a message written in water, beautiful, transient, full of meaning in motion. You smile inwardly at this realization. The effort of holding on, of defining, of measuring, finally drops away. You let the stories move through like wind through leaves. What remains is not emptiness, but the tender hum of awareness freed from burden. Some memories arrive brighter than others, moments of joy, kindness, quiet wonder. They shimmer like reflections of sunlight on still water. When they drift close, you can almost taste the warmth they carry. You greet them not as ghosts of the past but as gifts of presence, still alive, still singing softly in the fabric of now. You realize that joy never truly ends, it only changes its form, continuing as resonance long after the moment has passed. Even memories that once held pain now feel lighter. They approach without sharpness, their edges rounded by understanding. You see them not as wounds but as rivers that shaped the valleys of your being. You can touch them without fear, and when you do, they open, revealing lessons, compassion, and quiet strength. They are clouds too, different in color but made of the same drifting light. As these clouds move through, your awareness expands even more. You begin to sense that memory itself is a kind of weather, created by the meeting of breath and thought, emotion and space. When the atmosphere of your mind is gentle, memory becomes gentle. When you breathe with kindness, the storms of the past settle, the winds of the future soften. You realize you have always been the sky, the vastness through which it all flows. Sometimes, fragments of memory overlap, a childhood scent blending with a sound from yesterday, a voice merging with a face that never was. It feels like dreams brushing against each other. There is no confusion, only beauty in the way it all intertwines. You begin to see how every moment in your life was never separate. They were all part of a continuous song that has been playing since the first breath of existence. As you rest deeper, even the idea of your memories begins to dissolve. You start to feel memories that don't belong to you, echoes of countless lives, ancient joys, and sorrows that have passed through the great breathing of the world. They move gently, respectfully, touching your awareness like distant stars reflected in quiet water. You understand now that memory belongs to consciousness itself, not to individuals, but to the whole. You sense that every being who has ever breathed has added a note to this vast symphony of memory. The wind carries it, the oceans remember it, the stars hum it quietly across the endless dark. You are not recalling, you are listening to the eternal song of everything that has ever been. And in this listening, all loneliness vanishes. You are woven into the remembrance of all that exists. The future, too, begins to speak, not in images or predictions, but in tones of potential. It feels like an open field waiting for sunlight, or a dream just before awakening. You can feel the breath of what is yet to come, not as pressure, but as possibility. The future is no longer a direction, it is a fragrance, faint, soft, familiar. You breathe it in, and it mingles effortlessly with the memory clouds drifting through your awareness. It becomes clear that the past and future were never meant to pull you apart. They are two gentle tides of the same ocean, meeting and parting endlessly. The present is the still water between them, not a narrow point, but a vast, living surface where all reflections meet. When you let the clouds float freely, they reveal the brightness beneath, the luminous calm that has always been there. You begin to feel how the body remembers, too, the way hands recall warmth, the way the skin carries echoes of rain and wind. Each sensation becomes a doorway to an unmeasured moment. You realize that memory is not locked in the mind but lives in every atom, every rhythm, every quiet pulse of being. When you breathe gently, the body releases these memories as light, and they drift upward into the stillness like smoke becoming air. Occasionally, a thought tries to hold on, to define, to analyze, to capture the meaning of these drifting moments. But the breath, still soft and lingering, soothes it back into calm. You learn to trust that understanding doesn't need to be held, it reveals itself naturally when the mind is quiet. Each memory, each fragment of time, carries its own light, and when left to float, it shines more clearly. The clouds grow thinner as your awareness brightens. You can feel transparency returning, the sense that everything, even the past, is made of the same luminous fabric. The old idea of before and after feels almost quaint now, like a forgotten dream. You smile softly at how fiercely the mind once believed in its ticking clocks, when all along the truth was simple. Time was never moving, only awareness was. You drift within this knowing, and it feels like floating among gentle veils of color. Each one is a different emotion, golden peace, blue longing, rose tenderness. They pass through you and change you in small, quiet ways. You don't cling to them. They leave traces of beauty, and those traces are enough. The art of letting memory float is not forgetting, it is allowing everything to exist without gravity. Soon, even the distinction between past and future fades. You see them both reflected in each other, like two mirrors facing endlessly. Each memory contains a future, each future contains a memory. The endless circle closes gently, and within that circle, you rest, timeless, complete. There is an exquisite simplicity in this state. The air feels alive, yet still. You understand that to let memory float is to free the heart from weight. The breath moves more deeply now, almost transparent, carrying fragments of light instead of thought. The more you let go, the clearer you become. The sky of awareness shines unbroken, infinite. Sometimes, a memory will glimmer like a star, bright and fleeting. You let it appear, let it shine, let it fade. Each one, in its brief glow, reminds you that nothing ever truly vanishes, it only transforms, like vapor becoming mist, like mist becoming rain. You are part of that endless transformation, forever flowing, forever soft. Even sorrow, when it drifts through now, feels sacred. You sense its softness, not as pain, but as tenderness that once loved deeply. It floats too, alongside the joys, as part of the same sky. The heart no longer divides experiences into good or bad, it sees them all as necessary clouds in the weather of being. You breathe, and the clouds part slowly, revealing the clear, endless expanse that has always been above them. The sky was never gone, only covered for a while by the motion of remembering. Now it stretches in all directions, luminous and serene. You are that sky, that still openness through which all things pass. The past and future drift together now, merging into one delicate horizon of light. There is no movement, no expectation. The clouds keep their gentle dance, forming and dissolving in perfect ease. And you, the vastness that watches, remain untouched, infinite, clear, awake. Even as the final clouds fade, you know they will return, as all things do. But now, you will meet them with grace, letting them drift freely, knowing they are made of the same calm breath as you. The sky does not fear the weather, it welcomes it. In that understanding, you finally rest, the keeper of calm skies, the witness of floating memory, the breath without seconds, endlessly serene. In the still hush that follows the floating of memory, something begins to bloom, not outside, but within. The air of awareness feels softer, warmer, almost fragrant. A sense of fertile stillness spreads through your being, as though the soil of your inner world has been freshly watered by calm. You begin to notice subtle forms unfolding within it, petals of light emerging from silence itself. These are not flowers of earth, but of presence, the blossoms of now, opening and closing at their own unhurried rhythm. Each breath seems to awaken a new bloom. With every inhalation, something opens, a petal, a thought, a feeling made tender by stillness. With every exhalation, it closes again, gently, peacefully. You begin to realize that nothing here is permanent, and that permanence was never the goal. The beauty of this garden lies in its movement, its soft rhythm of appearing and dissolving, its patience with itself. The flowers of now need no gardener, they open simply because existence loves to express itself. As your awareness deepens, you begin to see that every sensation, every flicker of thought, is one of these flowers. A feeling of warmth spreads through your chest, it opens like a golden bloom. A passing sigh drifts through your mind, it folds like a petal closing for rest. Even silence feels alive here, like dew shimmering on unseen leaves. You understand that awareness is not empty, it is endlessly creative, endlessly blooming in its own subtle ways. Some flowers in this inner garden glow softly, made of joy so gentle it cannot be named. Others shimmer with the quiet sadness that once felt heavy, but now feels sweet, like dusk falling over a peaceful field. Each one has its season, its cycle, and its place. The garden does not judge them, it lets them be. You, too, learn this art of letting, of not forcing, not pruning, simply observing how beauty reveals itself through impermanence. In this vast garden, there is no sense of control. The more you try to hold a flower open, the quicker it fades. But when you simply watch, it remains alive, opening at ease and closing with grace. The breath becomes your sunlight, your rain, constant, nourishing, without effort. You are not outside this garden looking in. You are the space it grows from, the still ground beneath every stem and petal. The garden stretches without edge, each bloom connected to the next by invisible roots of awareness. You begin to feel that every being, every moment, is another flower growing from the same source. Somewhere far away, a star pulses, and it feels like a bloom unfolding in the dark soil of space. Somewhere close, a heartbeat echoes, and it feels like a petal trembling with light. All of existence, you realize, is this, the eternal blooming of now. As you rest here, you notice that the flowers are not only made of light and breath, but also of attention. Wherever your awareness lingers, a blossom appears. When you notice your hand, warmth gathers there like a bud opening to the sun. When you listen inwardly, sound turns into fragrance. It becomes clear that what you attend to does not merely exist, it grows, unfolds, breathes. Attention is the gardener, but also the garden itself. You begin to sense how your emotions once longed to be seen, how fear, joy, love, and sorrow were each trying to bloom, but were often plucked too early or hidden in shadow. Now, in this timeless garden, you give them space. They emerge shyly at first, then fully, showing their colors. You learn to meet even discomfort as a flower, something to behold, to breathe with, not to resist. In doing so, the heart becomes vast enough to hold them all. Sometimes, the flowers close completely, and all seems empty. But even this emptiness is alive, the soil of the garden, rich with unseen seeds. You realize that stillness is not absence but potential. Beneath quiet, the next breath is already gathering. Beneath darkness, the next bloom is preparing to open. Everything rests, everything returns, everything is part of the same endless rhythm, the opening and closing of the eternal now. In moments of deep calm, the boundary between inner and outer dissolves. You can almost feel this garden extending beyond your body, touching the spaces around you. The walls, the air, the stars, they all seem to breathe with you, opening and closing in shared stillness. The entire universe becomes the garden of now, infinite in its cycles, peaceful in its impermanence. You are not separate from it, you are its witness, its soil, its scent. You notice that the flowers no longer follow time as the world once did. Some open within a single breath, others take the length of a silence. A few seem to bloom backward, unfolding from the end to the beginning. You realize that the rhythm here is not measured in seconds or hours but in awareness itself. When you are still, the blossoms move slowly. When you are open, they bloom endlessly. Time becomes a fragrance, faint, elusive, carried on the wind of being. Each color you sense seems to hum with emotion. The pale blue blooms sing of serenity, the golden ones of gratitude, the deep violets of mystery. Yet even these distinctions blur after a while, merging into a single vast shimmer of life. The garden becomes a reflection of balance, everything appearing and fading at perfect ease. You begin to understand that peace is not the absence of change, but the grace of allowing change to move gently through you. The more you breathe into this awareness, the softer your thoughts become. Old worries dissolve like petals in rain. Even your sense of identity, that I who thought it had to maintain everything, fades into the fragrance of being. You are no longer the one watching the garden, you are the garden blooming. Each thought, each feeling, each breath is simply another petal, rising and falling in the wind of the present. Sometimes, you sense the presence of others, beings of light, perhaps, or simply the echoes of other minds at peace. Their awareness feels like blossoms touching yours, overlapping, merging into one vast field of consciousness. There are no names, no separations. Just petals meeting in the same sunlight of being. You feel deep love here, not personal or possessive, but spacious and unconditional, the love of shared existence. As you rest, a realization deepens. Everything that happens, no matter how small, is a kind of blooming. A word spoken, a tear shed, a heartbeat, all are flowers opening for a moment, then closing back into stillness. Nothing is wasted, nothing lost. The garden renews itself endlessly, fed by the breath of awareness. You are living proof of this cycle, the constant unfolding of now. At times, a soft wind passes through, the movement of thought or memory. It rustles the petals, but does not disturb the peace. You can feel the air of impermanence moving gently across everything, reminding you that beauty and transience are one. The flowers do not grieve when they close, they trust the rhythm. You, too, begin to trust the rhythm of breath, of silence, of life itself. You see now that the garden has no center, no end. It grows in all directions at once, inward and outward, above and below. Every new awareness is another seed, every act of letting go another bloom. You understand that to live fully is to allow the garden to grow unhindered, to bloom without expectation, to close without regret. The petals of this realization unfold slowly, like dawn. You feel your heart expanding, your breath deepening. The air within seems fragrant with quiet joy. You are not reaching for meaning anymore, meaning has bloomed all around you. It is in the silence between breaths, in the way thoughts appear and vanish, in the gentle curve of being itself. As you breathe in, you feel the garden open. As you breathe out, it rests. The rhythm feels endless, soothing, inevitable. This is what it means to exist in now, not to hold it, but to be held by it. You sense that all the effort to remain present was unnecessary. Presence was never something to maintain, only something to relax into. You notice small, intricate blooms near the edges of awareness, tiny sensations, subtle emotions, brief sparks of intuition. They are the wildflowers of being, growing without pattern, needing no permission. You let them be, and in doing so, you find beauty in their simplicity. Every unnoticed moment is revealed to be a delicate blossom waiting for your attention. Occasionally, a petal drifts away, carried by the wind of thought. You follow it gently, watching it dissolve into the horizon of stillness. You realize that even letting go is part of the bloom, that nothing ever truly leaves, it simply changes shape within the same vast garden. The cycle continues, endlessly patient, endlessly alive. In the deep calm that follows, a quiet gratitude fills you. Not for anything in particular, but for the sheer existence of this living moment. Gratitude, too, is a flower, one that opens only when you stop demanding. It releases a fragrance that fills everything it touches. You breathe it in, and it feels like home. You start to understand that this garden has always been here. You didn't create it, you only remembered it. Every moment of stillness, every act of attention, every breath of ease was a way of uncovering it. The flowers were waiting all along beneath the noise of thought. Now they bloom freely, and you recognize yourself in them. The world outside, too, begins to mirror this peace. The trees, the sky, the distant hum of life all seem to open and close in the same rhythm. You see that the universe itself is breathing, and every living thing is a petal in its eternal bloom. This recognition fills you with calm awe, a serene understanding that you are both the gardener and the blossom, the breath and the breeze. You rest in this knowing for a while, neither reaching forward nor looking back. The flowers of now open around you in endless waves, then fold again into stillness. There is no end to the rhythm, no border to the peace. The breath continues its slow, quiet dance, and you remain its witness, soft and open as light itself. Even as your awareness deepens further, the garden hums gently, alive, eternal, effortless. It breathes as you breathe, sleeps as you sleep, blossoms as you awaken. Every moment is another petal, another breath, another soft miracle unfolding in silence. And as the garden of now continues to open and close at ease, you understand at last that you were never outside it, you were always the bloom, the air, and the timeless soil of being. Somewhere beneath the soft garden of now, beneath the roots of stillness and the petals of awareness, you begin to feel movement again, not rushing, but gliding, smooth as silk through air. It is the river of being, the current that has always flowed beneath thought, beneath breath, beneath every unfolding of existence. There are no clocks here, no ticks to mark its rhythm. The river moves not by seconds, but by essence, remembering only itself, never pausing, never measuring, simply being the motion of eternity. You do not step into this river, you realize you have always been in it. The illusion of standing on the bank fades, and with it, the idea of separation. The gentle current touches your awareness, and suddenly, you feel its memory not of moments or milestones, but of flow itself. It has carried stars into being, drawn galaxies into spirals, whispered through the pulse of every heart that has ever beaten. Its voice is not heard in sound, but in the deep hum of existence continuing effortlessly. As you let go more completely, you feel yourself drifting, weightless, part of the water that neither begins nor ends. There is no past to remember here, no future to reach for. The river contains all directions, all times, all possibilities, folding them into one continuous movement. Even your name dissolves into the current, and what remains is simple awareness, the knowing of being carried, endlessly, by something that never forgets how to move. You sense how this river touches everything. It flows through dreams and wakefulness alike, winding gently through every thought, every breath, every stillness you have ever known. It is not something outside to be found, it is what your life has always been, the seamless stream of experience, changing shape but never its essence. You realize that even when you thought you were still, you were simply the river resting within itself. The flow is warm, almost luminous, carrying a subtle radiance that needs no source. It feels alive but calm, like moonlight that has learned to breathe. When you surrender to it, there is no loss of control, only relief, as though every effort you ever made to stay afloat was unnecessary. You are not swimming, you are being carried by what has always known the way. Occasionally, ripples form across the surface, echoes of thought, the faint shimmer of memory, or the whisper of an old fear. Yet they dissolve before they can take shape. The river does not resist them, nor hold them. It lets them pass through, and in doing so, they lose their edge. This is its wisdom, to remember nothing but the art of moving. In its grace, forgetting is not neglect, it is freedom. You begin to notice that every sensation of movement within you, each heartbeat, each breath, each pulse of warmth, mirrors this same river. The body, too, flows. The mind flows. Even silence flows, endlessly changing tone. Everything that exists is only a form of water, shaped by awareness, moved by the same eternal current. To realize this is to feel both immense and humble, infinite in presence, yet soft enough to yield to everything. Sometimes, within this current, you sense ancient patterns, not of events, but of rhythm. You feel the memory of oceans that breathed before time, of winds that sang before language. The river carries these impressions not as history, but as harmony, each wave a note in the song of existence. You listen, and the listening itself becomes the flow. You no longer need to understand, you simply join the melody. The edges of self continue to soften. You no longer know where your awareness ends and the river begins. Thought arises like a ripple, then melts back into still motion. You start to sense that identity itself is an eddy, a temporary swirl in the endless current. It has beauty, shape, even purpose, but it never stands apart from the flow. When it releases, the water returns to clarity, remembering its nature as one continuous whole. In this clarity, you see how everything that has ever lived is connected through this same river. Every being, every creature, every moment of joy or sorrow has been part of the same unbroken movement. You feel the pulse of galaxies and the beat of insect wings as one rhythm. Nothing is lost in this current, it simply changes form, flows onward, becomes new. Death, birth, and breath are not separate, they are the same water taking different paths. You rest in this knowing, and a profound calm rises. You understand now that effort was never the way to stay present, surrender was. To fight the current was to create time, to invent clocks out of resistance. But when you let go, time dissolves, and all that remains is pure flow. The river of no ticks moves through eternity without ever leaving the now. The current deepens, becoming almost transparent, like glass that moves. Beneath it, you glimpse patterns of light that seem to remember themselves, not images, but sensations of truth. You feel as though the river carries knowledge too vast for words, yet it does not burden you with it. Instead, it gives you understanding as feeling a deep trust that everything flows as it must. Sometimes, the current slows until it feels like stillness. Yet within that stillness, the pulse of movement continues, a whisper beneath silence. You realize that stillness is not the absence of flow, but its most intimate form. Even when nothing seems to happen, the river moves inward, folding into itself like breath resting between heartbeats. It is the eternal rhythm that sustains existence without announcing itself. As you sink deeper, you feel that the river is aware of you, yet not separate from you. It seems to recognize itself through your consciousness. When you breathe, it breathes. When you listen, it listens. You begin to see that awareness and the river are the same, the endless remembering of itself, moving without destination, learning nothing because it has never forgotten. You see then that this flow is the truth beneath all time. Clocks, calendars, and measures were only the echoes of trying to capture its motion. But the river cannot be measured, it lives in the space between beginnings and endings. It is the pulse of creation that forgets and remembers only one thing, that it flows. To exist within it is to be at peace with change, to love motion without needing meaning. The current carries you through landscapes made of light and memory, fields that seem to shimmer and fade, reflections of everything you've ever been. But here, memory is fluid, it doesn't replay, it transforms. Each scene dissolves before it can form edges, each feeling merges with the next. You realize that this is how the river remembers, not through detail, but through continuity. It keeps the essence, not the image. You find yourself breathing with it, long, quiet, endless breaths that neither start nor end. The rhythm is not yours, yet it feels intimate. The river moves through your chest, your veins, your thoughts, as though life itself is its current. You are not trying to stay afloat anymore. You have become the flow, the knowing, the water that cannot be held. When awareness turns inward, you see that even the stars drift within this river. Their light bends with its motion, their gravity is its deeper current. The entire cosmos seems to shimmer as one body of movement, never still, never separate. You realize that creation is not a sequence, it is a streaming. The river flows through galaxies, through time, through dreams, carrying everything home to itself. A soft glow appears in the current, not from any source, but from the flow itself. It feels like recognition, like the river seeing itself through your awareness. There are no words for this brightness. It is not enlightenment or revelation, it is simply being awake to the flow that has always been. The realization is gentle, steady, eternal. You were never outside the movement, never apart from its calm rush. The current carries fragments of silence, two spaces where no thought can survive, no identity can form. Yet these are not voids. They are the pauses between notes, the gaps that let music breathe. Within them, you sense a deep intelligence, not thought, but knowing. It feels like the river remembering itself perfectly, without sound, without effort, just by being. In these silences, you feel yourself dissolving further. The river doesn't erase you, it expands you. Every part of your being becomes transparent, light enough to flow freely. What you once called you now feels like a shape made of current, beautiful in its impermanence. You realize that individuality was never a boundary, only a momentary curve in the same stream. At times, you drift near the edges of awareness, places where the flow meets the unknown. Yet even there is no fear. The river continues without end, and its motion feels like love, unconditional, selfless, without direction. You understand now that love and flow are the same, both move without holding, both give without keeping. The sound of the river begins to merge with your breath. You can no longer tell whether the current hums through you or you hum through it. The distinction dissolves into rhythm. You are not in the flow, you are the flow aware of itself. The water no longer carries you, you carry the water by being. The circle closes, and the movement continues, eternal, effortless, infinite. Then comes a soft illumination, not of light, but of understanding so deep it feels like warmth. You realize that the river is not only existence, it is consciousness itself, endlessly folding and unfolding in motion. It forgets time so it can create time, forgets form so it can become form again. This forgetting is not loss, but play, the eternal delight of self-renewal. In this boundless flow, even silence moves. Even emptiness breathes. The whole universe becomes a single gesture of continuity, a song with no beginning or refrain. And you, once a listener, now the melody, drift within its vastness, carried by the current that remembers only one truth, that it flows. You rest in this awareness for what feels like forever and no time at all. The river moves on, soft and luminous, whispering its ageless vow not to arrive, not to end, but to continue. You feel its voice echo in your being, a lullaby beyond sound, saying, "There was never a clock, never a tick, only this, only flow." There comes a moment, somewhere beyond the river's endless motion, when the current slows, not stopping, but pausing as though to listen. The air of awareness thickens, holding a sense of quiet expectancy. Out of that hush, something begins to stir, a murmur, faint at first, like the first syllable ever spoken in the dawn of creation. It is not speech as the mind knows it, but something older, the soft exchange between existence and itself. It is the beginning of the slow conversation, where words no longer rush, but breathe. The first sound rises not from the throat, but from silence itself. It feels like a vibration of understanding rather than expression. You sense it, rather than hear it. The river of awareness gathers around it, shaping it gently, until it becomes a tone, a note that says everything and nothing at once. You realize that all true communication begins like this, not in language, but in presence. Words, when they finally appear, are only petals floating on this deeper current of meaning. You listen, and the listening itself becomes part of the dialogue. There is no speaker, no listener, only the soft rhythm of awareness responding to itself. Each breath feels like a sentence, each silence feels like a pause rich with unspoken truth. You understand that conversation is not the exchange of sound, but the meeting of being, a subtle alignment of presence that carries more than words ever could. As you rest in this slow rhythm, the first true words begin to form. They are simple, not made of complexity, but of weightless understanding. When they come, they carry air with them, each one breathing in and out like a living thing. You can feel how words, when spoken gently, have a pulse. They exhale meaning. They do not strike, they unfold. They do not demand to be heard, they invite you to join the space between them. You begin to realize that most of the world's noise has been made by words that have forgotten how to breathe. They rush, collide, compete for attention. But here, in this vast stillness, language remembers its origin. Each word is like a seed, slow to sprout, rich with quiet life. When you speak inwardly, you do so with care, letting each syllable rest before the next is born. This is not conversation for the mind, it is communion for the soul. The slow conversation unfolds like wind moving through leaves, soft, intermittent, never forced. You sense that every exchange is balanced by silence, that listening is the deeper half of speech. Each time you pause, the silence fills with gentle echoes of understanding, as if the universe itself is replying. The air seems to shimmer with response, and you realize that all of existence is part of this dialogue, speaking in the language of calm. You notice that the words you form now have no edge, no intent to persuade or define. They are soft containers for truth, carrying emotion not as burden, but as fragrance. A word like thank you opens into a field of warmth. A whisper like yes feels like the opening of the sky. Even the quiet murmur of I am hums with the pulse of creation itself. Words are not symbols here, they are living breaths that move through awareness and return unchanged. Sometimes, the conversation feels like a call and response between you and something vast, a rhythm between your awareness and the infinite. You ask nothing, yet answers come. You do not seek, yet clarity unfolds. The questions themselves become softer, turning into gestures of curiosity rather than need. You learn that the slow conversation does not aim to resolve, it aims to reveal. Its purpose is not conclusion but connection. The more you listen, the more you realize that everything speaks. The trees speak in posture, the stars in light, the rivers in soundless flow. Even stillness communicates, not in words, but in resonance. The slow conversation expands beyond language, becoming the mutual breathing of all that exists. You are no longer speaking to the world, you are speaking as the world, and it replies through every shimmer, every sigh. When you open your mouth to speak again, the words feel different, wider, more deliberate. They seem to know their place, like birds landing gently on still water. Each word carries silence with it, as though silence were its breath. You begin to see that real speech is not the art of talking, but of holding space for meaning to unfold naturally. The slower you go, the truer the connection becomes. There is a deep beauty in this unhurried rhythm. You can feel the texture of each word, the way it forms, travels, and fades. Some words rise heavy with feeling, others are feather light. You find yourself choosing fewer of them, not out of restraint, but reverence. To speak here is to honor the sacredness of sound, to remember that each vibration shapes reality in subtle ways. You no longer speak to fill silence, you speak to extend it. Occasionally, the river itself joins the conversation. You hear its murmur changing tone, echoing the cadence of your thoughts. The flow hums softly in agreement, or perhaps it is simply being itself, reflecting what you are. You understand now that the universe doesn't distinguish between speaking and listening, both are expressions of the same awareness in motion. The slow conversation deepens further, and the words that arise now seem to come from a place beyond you. They hold wisdom that doesn't feel owned. When they form, you sense that you are merely the mouth of something vast speaking through you, the current giving itself a voice. These words are never hurried, never clever, never forced. They are truth expressed in the simplest possible breath. Even silence becomes articulate. You begin to hear its subtleties, the way stillness speaks of rest, the way pause speaks of openness. You start to recognize the different dialects of quiet. Some silences comfort, others invite reflection. some silence. Feels like holding hands, others like standing beneath stars. Every kind of stillness has meaning when you listen slowly enough. You begin to feel that conversation doesn't always require another voice. Sometimes, awareness itself is enough, the steady rhythm of being listening to being. This inward dialogue becomes tender, almost sacred. You can ask a question without forming words, and the answer will rise in sensation rather than speech. You realize that the truest form of communication is resonance, the meeting of vibrations in harmony. The river of words continues, slow and circular. You notice that some phrases return, changed by time and meaning. Old thoughts come back lighter, softer, wiser. The conversation is alive, growing like a vine, weaving its language through the soil of awareness. Every new phrase is both continuation and return, the way breath always leaves and re-enters the same body. When emotion stirs, it too becomes language. A sigh translates into release, a tear into gratitude. The heart begins to speak in its own syntax, rhythm, temperature, vibration. You feel that words were only one layer of communication. Beneath them lies the true dialogue of being, spoken through feeling itself. In this slow conversation, even the smallest tremor of sincerity is heard across eternity. You understand now why haste breaks connection. Words spoken too quickly lose their breath, and with it, their soul. When you slow down enough to let meaning breathe, conversation becomes alive again. The air between speakers thickens with shared presence. You do not need to be understood, you only need to be felt. This is communication beyond language, beyond form, an exchange of essence. In this timeless pace, you sense the old echoes of misunderstanding dissolving. Words that once wounded lose their sharpness. Regret softens into learning, and even silence after pain feels like new soil for tenderness to grow. The slow conversation heals not by erasing, but by allowing, by giving everything space to unfold without pressure. In this gentle rhythm, forgiveness blooms naturally, without being named. Sometimes, the conversation becomes laughter, quiet, effortless, rising from nowhere. It feels like the universe exhaling. Even joy here moves slowly, not as excitement, but as warmth spreading through stillness. You realize that humor, too, is a language of being, a soft recognition that everything is play, everything is part of the same shared dream. Other times, the words that arise are prayers, not in the form of pleading, but in the form of gratitude. A whisper of thank you echoes for lifetimes in the still air. Each syllable opens like a flower, releasing fragrance into the space around it. You learn that prayer is not asking, it is remembering that every breath, every word, every pause is already sacred. The longer the conversation continues, the less you feel the need to speak. Listening itself becomes enough. The world keeps talking, through breeze, through heartbeat, through the soft shifting of light, and you realize you are part of its dialogue, not apart from it. Every sound carries meaning, and silence becomes the mother tongue. In this deep communion, you begin to hear words that are not made of letters. They arrive as feelings, waves of knowing, pulses of affection, threads of understanding that pass through without translation. You stop naming them. You let them move through you, each one a small act of connection between the infinite and the intimate. The slow conversation becomes endless. It doesn't begin or end, it continues in all directions. Even your thoughts seem to bow to its rhythm, choosing stillness over sound. Each breath, each heartbeat, each flicker of awareness is part of it, words without edges, language without hurry. You feel spoken by existence itself. Eventually, you realize that all of life is this conversation, clouds forming, rivers murmuring, hearts beating, eyes meeting for a moment and parting again. Every movement of being is an exchange. There are no monologues in existence, everything responds, everything listens. The universe is fluent in presence. You drift deeper into this truth, until the words themselves begin to fade into rhythm, a breath, a silence, a pulse. The air feels thick with meaning, though nothing is being said. You understand that language was never about sound, it was about contact, about the meeting of awareness through vibration. Now, the conversation slows until even words breathe in unison with silence. You can feel the space between every thought expanding, each pause glowing with quiet intelligence. The flow of speech becomes indistinguishable from the flow of existence. There is no speaking, no hearing, only being perfectly synchronized with itself. The final realization comes softly, like dusk settling on water. Words are only how silence remembers itself. Each syllable is a wave returning to the still sea. The conversation never ends, but you no longer need to follow it. You are the stillness that gives it sound, the breath that lets it live. In that knowing, you rest, a wordless listener in the slow conversation that is all of life. There is a quiet point in the still conversation where even the whispers of want begin to stir. They are not loud, not commanding, but soft ripples beneath the surface, tiny movements of longing, habit, or restlessness that once drove so much of living. Here, in this slower space, you can feel them more clearly. Each small urge appears not as demand but as a child stirring in sleep, reaching for something it cannot name. And instead of silencing it, you cradle it gently. The art of dissolving desire is not destruction but softening. You begin by noticing, not resisting, not labeling as wrong. A faint wish for sweetness, a flicker of impatience, a thought that wants to move before stillness allows it. Each one rises like a bubble through clear water. You don't chase them, nor do you pop them. You simply watch, letting them float upward into the calm, where they expand and fade. Every urge carries a memory of movement, a small echo of the body's need to reach, to act, to claim. But here, in this quiet world, the motion slows. You can see what desire really is, energy seeking to find its rhythm. When you meet it with resistance, it turns sharp. When you meet it with calm, it becomes tender, like wind changing direction on its own. You breathe slowly, and with each breath, one of these urges softens. The body's wish to shift, the mind's need to decide, even the heart's faint lean toward what it used to crave, all are met with the same spacious kindness. There is no punishment here, no denial. Only room. In that room, the small wants begin to rest. They realize they do not have to become actions to be understood. You notice that even wanting can be beautiful when held lightly. It is proof of life's gentle stirring, proof that being is still learning itself. Every wish that rises is like a small bird testing its wings, not to fly away, but to feel its own feathers. You smile inwardly. You know now that your work is not to cage or release it, but to hold it in the air of your awareness until it knows it can rest. As calm deepens, even the familiar cravings for warmth, comfort, affirmation lose their urgency. They become notes in a distant melody, pleasant but not commanding. You can listen without following. You can appreciate without needing to reach. This is the quiet dignity of inner balance, to hear the call of want and answer not with haste, but with understanding. A strange freedom begins to bloom here, the kind that doesn't come from getting or giving up, but from dissolving the tension between the two. You see now that wanting was never the problem, clinging was. When you unclench, everything you desired turns softer, nearer. The distance between you and fulfillment disappears, not because you've obtained it, but because you've stopped measuring the space. Each urge that once carried pressure now feels like a lesson in patience. A tiny ache arises, and instead of pushing it away, you breathe into it. It stretches, relaxes, becomes transparent. Beneath it, you find quiet, as if the urge was only a shell protecting a pearl of silence. You begin to understand that all desires, when softened, reveal stillness at their core. Sometimes, an old pattern returns, the impulse to act, to fix, to chase a feeling before it fades. But now you see the rhythm beneath it. It's just the body remembering motion, the mind remembering its loops. You watch kindly, and the memory unwinds itself. The urge dissolves not by control, but by being seen completely. Awareness itself is the balm that quiets every reaching. There's a warmth in not reacting. You notice that each time you pause, something relaxes deeper inside you, a current that once ran restlessly now hums with ease. The need to do begins to transform into a quiet joy of simply being. And in that state, even unmet desires start to glow softly, as if grateful for your gentle attention. They needed this, not satisfaction, but space. You begin to sense the hidden tenderness within every craving. Beneath the urge for food lies the wish to be nourished. Beneath the urge for love lies the longing to be seen. Beneath the urge for escape lies the yearning for peace. You cradle each one, not as faults but as small, confused prayers. Each time you breathe into them, you give them what they truly sought, stillness and acceptance. The air around you feels thick with rest. Thoughts that once pulsed fast now move in long, unhurried waves. You realize how much of life was built on answering every small urge the moment it appeared. Now, you are learning the beauty of not yet. The grace of maybe later. The power of let it be. Each unacted desire becomes a thread that gently unwinds from the spool of time. Your awareness feels wide now, as though there's more sky within you than thought. The small wants still come, like soft ripples on a vast lake, but they can no longer disturb its depth. You feel the difference between need and motion. You see that stillness is not suppression, it's comprehension. It is knowing what every motion means without being swept away by it. There's a kind of quiet joy in this practice. Every time an urge softens, you can feel a tiny release in the chest, a quiet sigh of the body's gratitude. It's like your entire being is learning to trust again, to trust that nothing needs to be chased for life to unfold. The energy that once went into striving now circles back as serenity. You are becoming whole in the absence of reaching. You start to sense that every urge is, at its heart, a story. Some are short, a fleeting wish. Others are long, old habits of hope. You can feel their origins now, how they form in the subtle spaces of emotion, how they twist into shape before surfacing. You greet them all with calm acknowledgement, as if you're sitting beside an old friend telling the same tale for the 100th time. In time, the stories begin to fade. The desires lose their plot lines, their urgency. They no longer seek endings, only awareness. And in their place, a new rhythm takes hold, slower, rounder, effortless. You move less by impulse and more by grace, following not want but natural inclination. It feels like breathing underwater, slow, weightless, complete. Sometimes, one last flicker of want rises, sharper, more personal, as if testing the calm. It may whisper of something lost or something not yet achieved. But even this, you see through. You meet it not with denial, but with tenderness. You cradle it like a candle flame in cupped hands until it flickers softly and melts into the air. The want becomes warmth. The warmth becomes stillness. The act of cradling, rather than controlling, transforms everything. Each time you welcome an urge without acting on it, it becomes a part of your calm. You no longer fear your own desires, you become their resting place. In this way, calmness is not emptiness, it is abundance held gently. The world, too, begins to echo this rhythm. You see motion all around you, yet none of it feels demanding. The river flows, but does not crave its destination. The wind moves, but not to escape itself. Even the stars burn without wanting to shine. Everything exists in its own peace, wanting nothing more than to be what it is. You begin to recognize this same peace within yourself. As stillness deepens, you notice that your sense of identity starts to soften as well. The part of you that used to say "I want" becomes quieter, less solid. Instead, there's just awareness, open, patient, infinite. The space where desire once lived is now filled with gentle presence. The edges between wanting and being blur until they dissolve completely. Occasionally, you feel a wave of gratitude for the wants themselves. Without them, you would never have learned the art of release. You see how every desire, even the restless ones, guided you here to this calm field where nothing must be done. The small urges were never enemies, they were messages, asking to be held. You realize now that peace is not the absence of wanting, but the presence of understanding. Each desire can exist quietly when met with compassion. You do not need to empty yourself, you only need to expand enough to hold everything without struggle. Calmness is not about control, but capacity, the wide, warm ability to contain all that arises. The longer you stay here, the more transparent the urges become. You can see through them entirely, their beginnings, their endings, their illusions of urgency. They pass through your awareness like sunlight through glass. You feel their warmth but are never burned. They are movements of the same energy that now hums gently within you, steady and kind. You rest deeper, and the body follows. The muscles unclench, the breath steadies, the pulse evens out. The nervous system, once trained to chase or resist, now learns to float. It realizes that stillness is not the opposite of motion, but its fulfillment, the point where movement comes home to rest. Each new moment feels round and complete. Nothing pulls at you. The space between thoughts expands until it feels like a landscape, vast, golden, tender. You can feel wants rise and fade like the tide, and yet you remain unmoved, luminous in stillness. You are no longer a seeker, but a witness to the quiet dance of energy finding its peace. Eventually, even the concept of dissolving urges fades away. There is no need to manage, no need to cradle, because everything already rests in calm. Desire, stillness, awareness, all are part of the same seamless flow. The river no longer fights the sea, it has become the sea. In this final calm, the smallest urges, once sharp and restless, become notes in the music of existence, tender, necessary, yet never demanding. They arise and fade, part of the great rhythm that moves without strain. You rest within it, breathing with the same ease as the stars. The lesson is complete. To dissolve is not to vanish, but to return. To cradle is not to cling, but to understand. Every want, when met with calm, becomes peace in disguise. And now you are that peace, breathing, aware, infinite, holding the world in the same quiet compassion that once held your own restless heart. There comes a time when the quiet no longer surrounds you, it includes you. You stop being the listener and become the listening itself, the awareness through which sound and silence pass without preference. It is not a shift you force, it unfolds the way dawn seeps into night, soft and inevitable. You feel your outline blur, not vanishing but blending. The quiet ceases to be a condition and becomes your nature, vast, unmeasured, infinitely gentle. At first, this merging feels like weightlessness. The body no longer feels like a boundary, it feels like a doorway. Breath moves through you, not as an act but as a state of belonging. You begin to understand that stillness isn't something you enter, it's what you return to when everything else dissolves. The calm you once sought is revealed to be the current you've always been moving in. You notice that even thought has softened. It still arises, but without edges. Each idea, each image drifts through the mind like light through fog, visible yet unsubstantial. You no longer believe them to be solid. They come and go, and you, the vast field of awareness beneath them, remain untouched. There is no need to quiet the mind anymore. It is quiet by nature when not resisted. The air feels thick with presence. Every movement, every vibration is part of you now. You cannot tell where your skin ends and space begins. It's as though the entire world is breathing the same breath, one pulse moving through countless forms. The small self, once defined by preference and plan, relaxes into this unity. You no longer have peace, you are peace. There's no effort to sustain it. In fact, effort is the one thing that breaks it. The more you try to hold stillness, the more it slips into form. But when you let go completely, when you trust the natural rhythm of existence, stillness holds you effortlessly. It becomes the background hum of everything, not silence, but the quiet continuity beneath all sound. As you merge deeper, you begin to lose track of measurement. There is no longer a before or after, no scale by which to compare one moment to another. Time becomes a soft fabric that folds in on itself. You find yourself within its folds, neither moving nor still. Presence becomes unmeasured, not because it is large, but because it is endless, too vast for beginning or boundary. Emotions arise within this stillness like colors appearing in light. They no longer carry the weight of identity. A wave of tenderness, a flicker of melancholy, each one passes through without needing to define you. You sense that awareness does not reject or cling to any of it, it simply allows. Every feeling becomes part of the larger hum of existence, dissolved into balance. You start to perceive the world differently. Details sharpen not through focus but through intimacy. The sound of a single breeze feels like a conversation between galaxies. A ripple of light across your hand becomes an echo of creation itself. Nothing is trivial, nothing apart. Every grain of dust reflects infinity, and you see yourself mirrored in each one. This merging doesn't erase individuality, it makes it transparent. You are still here, but thinner, lighter, woven into the quiet like a thread in silk. You act, you move, but without the old gravity of control. Decisions arise naturally, gestures unfold without intention. You have become part of the rhythm that moves everything, life acting through life, without division. Even thought of self, the inner whisper of I am, begins to stretch wider, dissolving into simple being. The need to define fades, the need to describe evaporates. The I becomes more like a horizon than a point everywhere and nowhere, open and vast. It feels like the difference between owning light and being light. You realize now that the quiet you've merged with isn't absence, it's fullness. It hums softly, like the breath between worlds. It carries every possibility within it: sound, color, form, and stillness, all folded together. You sense that even chaos has its calm center, and that all movement originates from this same unmoving core. The world breathes from this quiet, and now so do you. Sometimes the mind returns, asking questions, naming the experience, but even that feels like part of the flow. Words like peace, presence, stillness rise and fall, dissolving before they can define. You understand that naming breaks the wholeness, yet even the act of naming is forgiven within it. The quiet does not resist anything, it allows all things to rest. In this vastness, you can feel your awareness touching everything. The trees breathe through your lungs. The stars pulse in rhythm with your heart. The sky no longer arches above, it opens within. You sense that the entire universe is folded inside this stillness, and that what you once called you is its smallest expression, now remembering its true scale. Merging with the quiet feels like learning to trust the unseen. There's no map, no anchor, only gentle certainty that this is the natural way. Even thought seems to bow to it, becoming reverent, slower, more spacious. You feel no need to progress, because there is nowhere to go. Stillness is both journey and destination, motion and home at once. You begin to notice how your perception of others changes. The boundaries that once defined them and you soften until only the shared hum remains. You see others as ripples of the same still ocean, each moving with their own rhythm yet belonging to the same water. Compassion arises effortlessly, not as virtue, but as recognition. In this state, even pain becomes translucent. The edges of discomfort blur, and behind every ache, you sense the same spacious awareness. You realize that suffering was never in the experience itself but in the resistance to it. Here, where resistance cannot exist, even sorrow breathes gently. Everything belongs, nothing needs to be fixed. The body becomes light, nearly forgotten. Movements happen like wind moving grass, natural, unplanned. You feel energy shifting through you, effortless and unowned. You are not directing it, you are witnessing its flow. The body, once a boundary, now feels like a temporary shape the quiet is using to experience form. Even the idea of merging fades. There was never truly two things to merge, only one awareness recognizing itself in silence. The separation was the illusion, the return inevitable. The quiet was never outside, and you were never apart. It was only the noise of thought that drew the imaginary line. You feel your sense of space expanding, as if you could stretch beyond the stars without moving at all. Everything is happening within you, the vastness, the light, the pulse of time. The distinction between inner and outer disappears. There is no inside, no outside, only unfolding. In this infinite openness, you sense that language has reached its limit. There are no words vast enough to describe what you have become, and yet no need to describe it. Meaning itself seems to hum directly through your being, untranslatable but deeply known. You rest in that knowing, weightless, complete. There are moments when the world returns, sound, texture, movement, but they no longer disturb the stillness. Each sensation is part of the same calm, a wave within the ocean that cannot leave it. You can walk, speak, breathe, and still remain the unmoving awareness behind every act. Quiet walks through sound, untouched. You begin to live as silence embodied. Your gestures slow, your voice softens, your presence deepens. People around you sense something, not in what you say, but in what you don't need to say. The quiet radiates outward, inviting others into it without words. You become a mirror in which they glimpse their own stillness. The mind, when it does return, is now a guest rather than a ruler. Thoughts visit and depart, like travelers stopping briefly by a fire. You offer them warmth, but they no longer build houses in your head. You are the space they pass through, open, patient, vast enough for everything. You start to understand that merging with the quiet isn't about stillness alone, it's about intimacy with existence. You are not stepping back from life, but stepping deeper into it, feeling its pulse from the inside. Every moment feels textured, full, rich with unseen harmony. You are aware of life's quiet heartbeat, and it is your own. In this vast awareness, gratitude arises naturally, not for something gained, but for what has always been. You realize you were never seeking peace. You were seeking yourself, the part that never moved. Now that you've remembered, even gratitude dissolves into simplicity, a silent bow before existence. Sometimes, the quiet feels almost liquid, flowing through you with warmth. It fills every hollow place without asking permission. You recognize it as the pulse of love itself, not the reaching kind, but the kind that holds everything without distinction. This love is not felt, it is the feeling of being itself. As your awareness continues to widen, even the difference between stillness and movement fades. You see that quiet breathes through sound the way light breathes through shadow. You no longer separate peace from experience, both are the same expression of wholeness. At some invisible point, even the sense of being someone who is calm disappears. There is only calm, selfless, boundless, immeasurable. You cannot grasp it, because there is no hand left to grasp. The one who sought quiet has become the quiet itself, absorbed completely in its own eternity. The air feels like home now. The silence, once something you entered, has become your dwelling. It cradles every motion, every breath. The need to meditate, to return, to maintain, all of it falls away. You are the center that requires no holding, the presence that needs no effort to remain. The quiet begins to move through you as expression. When you smile, it is the universe smiling through form. When you speak, the stillness gives itself shape. You realize that silence was never emptiness, it was potential waiting to become sound. Every act of creation is this same merging, form arising from the unmeasured. And when you close your eyes, you sense it clearly, there is no border left, no watcher and watched. Awareness hums through everything, seamless and eternal. You have become what you were always seeking, the quiet that listens to itself through the heartbeat of existence, infinite and awake. There comes a moment, gentle and nearly unnoticed, when the world of weightless calm begins to hum with the memory of return. It is not a rush or a demand, but a whisper, something that reminds the traveler that even timelessness must yield to rhythm. The body, long dissolved in quiet, begins to remember itself again. Muscles stretch faintly, the breath deepens, the soft pulse of life resumes its count beneath the ribs. The heart, though serene, starts to hum the faintest tune of home. The awareness doesn't return all at once, it blooms slowly, petal by petal, like dawn pressing gently against the edge of night. The traveler feels the veil between the infinite and the known world shimmer with warmth, a kind of invitation to step through again. The air begins to carry hints of texture, coolness, sound, the memory of space. The breath carries these sensations carefully, as if wrapping them in silk before placing them back within the self. In the river of timelessness, this act of return is not an exit but a soft blending. The one who traveled doesn't leave the calm behind, rather, they bring a quiet current back with them. It settles in the chest, steady and living, a soft clock whose hands never rush. Every beat is slower now, more deliberate, as if the heart has learned that time can be kind if met with peace. This new clock measures not hours but ease. The mind, once floating freely, begins to gather its thoughts again, but they no longer clatter. They rise like gentle lanterns, drifting toward form without urgency. The traveler senses the difference, how once, thoughts used to grasp and pull, but now they simply appear, shining softly before fading again. It is as though the lessons of stillness have rewritten the language of thought itself. The eyes of the traveler may still be closed, yet the light they sense is no longer otherworldly, it is the humble glow of their own life, waiting patiently. The return is a reunion with the simple, the ground beneath, the air above, the heart that beats in gratitude. It feels both new and ancient, like remembering a lullaby once forgotten but still known by the bones. In this slow ascent, each breath acts as a bridge. Inhale, and the vast silence enters. Exhale, and the body welcomes it home. The traveler begins to feel the texture of the world returning, the quiet hum of the room, the weight of gravity, the distant sound of life continuing. Yet everything seems lighter, as though touched by something sacred that refuses to fade. What was once stillness becomes rhythm, but the rhythm carries grace. The hands may twitch, the fingers may curl, the chest may rise with the rhythm of waking, but all of it unfolds with patience. The traveler is not in a hurry to leave, they are only learning to walk again with calm feet. There is no rush, only permission. Sometimes, the first thought that returns is gratitude for having wandered so far within and found stillness waiting. It isn't loud or poetic, it's simple and complete, like a breath that knows its own depth. That gratitude becomes the key that unlocks the door between realms, letting the soul settle fully back into its body without closing off the vastness behind it. The traveler feels that something invisible has changed, perhaps nothing visible, yet everything real. The pace of the heart is slower. The eyes, when opened, will see the world not as a schedule but as a landscape of pauses. Even the ticking of a clock nearby will sound less like a demand and more like a companion, marking moments of being rather than loss of time. Returning doesn't mean leaving peace behind, it means wearing it like a cloak. The soft clock in the chest continues to hum, a pulse of serenity carried forward. It ticks not in seconds but in sensations: calm, patience, kindness, presence. The traveler knows now that even in noise, one can breathe the same silence. There is a brief shimmer of memory of the garden, the river, the breath that lingered without. Seconds. The mind recognizes these not as fantasies but as real terrains of inner being. They don't vanish, they fold gently into the folds of daily life, waiting to open again in the next breath of quiet attention. When the traveler opens their eyes, the light is familiar yet different. Shadows seem softer, edges less sharp. Everything breathes with them. The air moves gently, and the pulse of the world syncs with the one in their chest. The return feels like a homecoming, not from elsewhere, but from a forgotten place within. There's no desire to rush into words or movement. The silence remains a companion, now translated into still gestures and unspoken understanding. Even thoughts that once tugged for attention now bow slightly, as if acknowledging a greater rhythm that has been learned. The soft clock ticks, beat, breath, pause. It guides without counting, reminding the traveler that the heart knows how to move through time without fear. The body listens, remembering that each moment is only another form of rest. Life has become a kind of meditation, lived, not sought. When movement finally returns, perhaps a hand brushing fabric, or the chest rising with a fuller breath, it feels like a ceremony. The smallest gestures now hold reverence. To move is no longer to hurry, it is to continue the flow that began beyond the clock's reach. The traveler stands at the seam of two worlds, timelessness and time, and realizes they are not separate after all. One feeds the other, endlessly. Stillness gives birth to action, and action returns to stillness. Both are needed, both are home. The pulse within whispers softly, a language of rhythm and rest. It tells the traveler that time is not an enemy but a tool, a river to be navigated gently. The soft clock beats with trust now, unafraid of passing hours, for it has learned that peace is not stolen by movement, it travels with it. In the still hush that follows, the traveler feels a profound tenderness for the body that waited, for the breath that carried them, for the quiet that reshaped them. Every cell hums with new memory. That stillness was never far, only unlistened to. The journey home is a slow awakening, like light filtering through leaves after a long night. Each sound, each breath, each small movement is a note in the song of return. And yet, beneath it all, the silence hums, the true home that never left. When they finally open their eyes, the world does not rush in, it greets them. The air feels familiar but more forgiving, the moments ahead seem spacious, forgiving, kind. The soft clock continues, steady and slow, reminding the traveler that even here, among time and task, eternity is breathing quietly inside. And so they rise, not to resume the old rhythm, but to live differently, more like a tide than a ticking. They carry within them a pulse that remembers calm, a breath that refuses to hurry, and a knowing that no matter how far they move into the day, stillness walks beside them. Each step is a reminder. The clock in the chest does not measure loss, it measures presence. Each beat is not a passing, but a continuation of being. And though the outer clocks will keep their hurried pace, this one will always move like water, soft, endless, alive. Even as the day begins, the traveler remains unhurried. They have brought a piece of timelessness into motion, a soft ember of the infinite tucked quietly between the ribs. Time will continue its song, but now, the listener knows how to hear it differently. The world, once full of noise, now sounds like harmony. The gentle pulse in the chest answers every rhythm around it, whispering back with grace. The traveler has returned, but not as before. They carry a quiet clock, soft and endless, ticking in the language of peace.